a round of applause or raising your hand. Whoever saw the TV show Scorpion on TV, right? It was seen by what, 26 million people?
26 million
26 million US people. Unbelievable, and it was all about his life story. And you're the executive producer of this, right?
Correct, yes.
And my understanding is that your IQ, when it was checked, was a whopping, do you want me to say it?
I'm testing you now.
197.
Well done. You got the number right.
197 IQ, which is more than all the other guys that are out there, and it puts you in one of the top or the most intelligent people on the planet Earth. And a lot of times people would question whether you're that smart or whether you're doing these things. And it was really interesting because I asked you one time at dinner about that, and you said, it's not my job to prove everyone else wrong. My only job is to prove myself right. And it was really, really cool because he's so strong in his conviction. But the things that you've come up with, you're a futurist. You see things the way they're going to be, not just the way they are today. And how does your brain work like that?
Well, part of it, I think, is I have a fanatical interest in technology and where things are headed, and I see the world in a very mathematical way, which actually makes life a lot simpler. We've talked about this before. If you eliminate feelings from life, you can actually make much better decisions and manage your happiness as a stability, more stable than a roller coaster ride if you don't.
So he's a low EQ guy, by the way, right? And he's a high IQ guy. And it's really, really interesting because of the conversations that we have, right? And the whole idea is that you also have to have the yin and yang. So you have a partner that kind of has the EQ side that you bring along with you too, correct?
Correct, yeah. In the company, we have folks that are high IQ, and we supplement them with folks who are high EQ to babysit the geniuses and the customers. So we call them super nannies.
Super nannies. And one of the coolest things I love this about you is that you talk about the power of renting a brain. What does that mean?
Well, to me, it seems an obvious concept, but it seems really hard for people to wrap their head around it, that everything you have in life, from your assets, your family, people around you, comes from how you think and your habits. And so your mind is your only asset, really, and everything else is a reflection of that. If your life is a snowball of hell, your mind is probably broken. And if it's consistently going well and heading upwards, then your mind is more than 50% repaired. And we're used to renting excess capacity in anything else. You're holding this conference, you're not going to hold this many people in your house, so you rented excess capacity. You go to move house, you call U-Haul, you rent a larger truck because you can't fit it all in your car. So the concept of renting a brain to say, I want to grow my business, I want to fix a problem, I need to do something that's outside of my core competency, it makes sense to reach out to other folks that maybe have a larger Rolodex. Maybe they've done it 4 times before. Maybe they have the checklist on it. And that's the concept of Concierge Up, one of the services powered by Scorpion, is that whatever the problem is, we can probably help with it. At this point, we've seen a lot and done a lot over 30 years. So you brainstorm with and work with other brains. More, 2 heads are better than one.
Yeah, and you always say we can solve any funded project, meaning that if it's just an idea and it's a concept is one thing, but if it's financed and you're ready to go and you can rent this brain and afford to do it, then all these ideas and concepts and the resources you have are at their disposal.
Correct. So I've dumbed down the company to 3 words: any funded need. And we really mean that. The need could be a problem or a wish. And if you can articulate the need to us, then we can probably solve it with you, whether that's increasing revenue, dealing with an ex-wife who's an issue, dealing with a family issue, a kid who's sick, a medical mystery, security issues that folks have had, even growing a business. We've worked a lot in companies recently, even in the cannabis industry, whereas they're switching to a more corporate mode. They need HR directors and security staff and standard operating procedures and internal audits to pass to keep the regulators happy and keep their licenses in an industry that hasn't even defined what the audits are yet or what passing them means. Now, have we done that before specifically? No, but we spent 7 years doing it with Sarbanes-Oxley and SAS 70 in the finance industry for $2 trillion. And a lot of the mechanism of that helps us work with the auditors in other industries. So it really is a matter of people understanding that, yeah, you don't have to figure it all out on your own. And the other thing is each person who comes to us, they have a core competency. There's something you're better at than we'll ever be. And we're not competing with that. But usually if you spend your 10,000 hours becoming an expert at one thing, something else has to suffer, like my EQ. So you'd end up, in a lot of cases, sucking at a lot of other areas.
So work your strengths, hire your weaknesses.
If you're great at sales and marketing, probably your tax planning and contracts is not the strongest.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
And it's interesting, just recently, last time you were going to come to the Secret Knocking, you couldn't because you were leaving to go to the Pentagon to speak to all the generals, because it came out that you actually were behind a lot of the information and the technology behind what?
Well, yeah, it was announced by the U.S. Army at the beginning of last year that it's our artificial intelligence in the Predator drone for the Army's fleet, the MQ-1 Predator and Grey Eagle and a few others. And that helps both protect our guys on the ground, and we've saved a few lives overseas with our military technology and anti-terrorism work.
Pretty cool, right? Amazing. Well, one of the stories, and I know you've told this one a few times, and you might like it or not, but I love this story, is the one about the father's, kid getting married, and you wanted to kind of intercept. Would you share that story?
Okay, sure. For those that haven't already heard it. So when we say any funded need, we really mean any. So one of our clients a few years ago, he was a billionaire, and he called us up concerned that there's been a rift between him and his son, and they're kind of growing distant. And in the meantime, his son fell in love with a Ukrainian gold digger, and he wanted us to break him up before the wedding, but don't let him know we interfered. So, what we did is we took on the project, had another billionaire's son rent a mansion down the street from him, profiled him, our PsyOps area did a psych profile, so wore the same suits, drove a similar Aston Martin, partied at the same clubs, arranged with the club owners to be in the booth next door. Quickly, they became friends. The girl was a little easier. She loves to work out every morning and then go to a Starbucks, so we set up another Ukrainian girl in the designer jeans and Louis Vuittons to stand in front of her on the phone, speaking her language, talking, and they never connected. Then we had her behind her in the line the next day, and they were talking on the phone, and they never connected. So the third day, we just got there early enough and rented out all of Starbucks with actors, and left one seat open. So there was only one place for her to sit, which was with our girl. So they sat and they chatted, and it took a while, but eventually from our girl talking about how gullible Americans are and how easy it is to gold dig them, the other girl finally opens up and says, yeah, she has a billionaire's son on the hook. She plans on marrying him, getting her green card, divorcing him, taking the money to bring her real boyfriend over from the Ukraine. Now, our girl was wearing a wire, but that's inadmissible in court, and it also can't be played for the son because otherwise he would know that he was interfered. He was in this manipulated world. That was for me because our company only does the greater good. We always want to make sure that they weren't really in love, it wasn't a real relationship. Everything we do is either neutral or good, positive, otherwise we don't do it. So we ended up, thank you.
Did you almost smile for a second? That was awesome.
It seemed appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm trainable. So then what happened was we ended up getting a psychologist who works with teenagers to write a speech of exactly what a parent shouldn't say to a son to piss them off. And an acting coach worked with the father to teach him to deliver that speech. And then we had a signal where we text him a certain thing. On a Thursday night, he ended up picking a fight over something simple with the son. It escalated, and he delivered the speech perfectly. Son got pissed off, went to his room, packed up his bag, and went to his new friend's house down the street. Friend said, that's terrible. He empathized with him. He said, you should get revenge on your father somehow. I don't know how. He said, you're welcome to stay here, but I fly to the Dominican Republic tomorrow for my friend's wedding. Took a while, light bulb turned on. He said, that's it. I'll grab the other girl, no prenup, fly with you, and get married in Dominican Republic after the first wedding with the same priest. And that's what they did. And they went and eloped and got married. And then they went on the honeymoon, and then she went ahead and while she was on the honeymoon, we were able to see that she filed for her I-94 forms and her green card and so on. We waited a while afterwards. Once she was in process, she then went ahead and told him that she wanted a settlement, a rather large one, or she'd embarrass the family in the press. And at that point, she was sent to one of our downtown offices to get her settlement for the divorce. And she didn't know who we were and didn't recognize me, so we went in and we gave her a contract, and she flicked through it and said, this is an acting contract. I said, I know. Do you recognize the signature? She looks at the back page, she turns white. It was the priest. So the first wedding was fake. All the attendees were fake. The second wedding was fake. The marriage certificate was fake, which was interesting because the second letter she got then was for Homeland Security, banning her from the US for 10 years. The Uber with her bags was sitting outside with a one-way flight back to Ukraine and put her under a gag order. And the son had a Dear John letter in her handwriting that we'd put together saying she didn't want to talk to him anymore, but she didn't need anything from him. And we left it with him rebonding with the father who never interfered.
Now, I was a big fan. I was a big fan of Scorpion. You had 4 seasons, right?
Yeah, 96 episodes.
Unbelievable how successful that was. And I kept asking. I'd be watching. I'd call him. I'd go, "Is this true? Did you really do this thing? You know, the blood transfusions and all this different stuff." And you said that the people that were on the show, the characters, were all real. They just changed the names and they changed kind of the sex of them, but they were real people. Is that true?
Yeah, the show stories, we actually, because we get that question so much, we went back and looked through some of the scripts for the first season at least, and it was about 70% true. The interactions, the jokes, the characters on it are all based on real people who we've worked with in the company. Yes, Hollywood changed some of the hot chicks that don't exist in the business that we're in. So the Asian girl Happy is a 55-year-old guy who's now very grumpy because he was represented by a girl. What happens is at the beginning of each season, we'd sit with the writers and give them the stories of what happens with these guys, like when they go speed dating with no EQ, or the interactions between them, the jokes, the pranks. And before the premiere, each actor got to sit down and have dinner with themselves. They met the real version of themselves, got to pick their brain and see what they were like and what the character is like with their parents, and when they're mad and when they're with stupid people and when they're with smart people, how do they act? And that was helpful to them to play out the characters. And I was involved in the casting too, to try and pick people that I thought would be believable in those roles. So the character Sylvester, for example, on the show, in real life is my best friend since college. We still work together. He lives in Santa Monica. So it was very personal for us, the show, but it also put out the message to kids that, first of all, every problem has a solution, if you think outside the box enough, that there's a place for everyone who never fit in, like me. I had to create one, an orphanage for the mentally enabled. And the third one is that being smart is cool.
Yeah.
And we worship enough basketball players and rap stars that it'd be nice if we also worship some Einsteins. So that should be good for the next generation.
That's pretty cool. So in football, you never throw the football where the wide receiver's standing. You throw it downfield and let him run to it. And one of the things I like about you, again, you're a visionary. You always see what's coming next, or at least you have a pretty good prediction about it. What do you see things going in the next few years? Do you see any big trends coming that we could be aware of?
Is this where I get to be the demotivational speaker?
I want the reality, because you and I kind of go deep on this stuff, but I want to hear your thoughts.
So any economist will tell you there is no financial explanation right now for why the U.S. isn't collapsed already. We're running on fumes. We're 20 trillion in debt. We don't produce anything. We consume everything. And we're 47th in math, where the Third World War will be a cyber war. We'll get our ass kicked. But more troublesome than that is some things that are very, very predictable. A few years ago, we didn't have Uber. Now it's a word in the dictionary we use instead of taxis. In the Industrial Revolution, we had millions of horses doing things, and then we didn't need them anymore. In the AI revolution coming up, we are the horses. And you can see some of that writing on the wall if you just do basic math. I'm going to quote some numbers here. You can Google them all and see I shouldn't be off by more than 5%, but Whole Foods bought Amazon. You can walk in, grab anything off the shelf, and walk out without going through checkout. It has proximity scanners. Well, there's 3 million, primarily girls, who work as checkout counter people across the US. In the military, we've had unmanned vehicles, unmanned submarines, unmanned boats, and long-range missiles. So there's 3 million directly employed, another 3 million indirectly employed by military and government contracting. We're never going to put that many boots on the ground again. If Uber right now decided to have their own self-driving car that's electric, which is already legal in Nevada, New York, and has been released and done in Pittsburgh for a year and a half. And by the way, Uber partnered with Volvo, which is owned by the Chinese, so they'll know who everyone is, where they go, where they use their credit card, who they had dinner with, and where they live. They can use that data to do targeted advertising like Netflix in the back of the vehicle. Now, what slows down disruption to an economy usually is a thing called the speed of adoption. If I invented a better iPhone right now, it would still take 3 years by the time people start trusting it and choosing it and buying it. But if I put self-driving Ubers out tonight and you all called an Uber and it showed up and it knows where you're going and you're free Netflix in the back, you're like, okay, weird, I'll get in. You were hoping the driver wouldn't talk to you anyway, so or maybe that's just me. So if we did that, that's 160,000 Uber drivers out of business. But let's look at the knock-on effect, because these are maintained like buses by Metro downtown, and they're electric. So that means a student doesn't need to spend 20 grand buying a Prius if they can get around for 2 grand a year, which means car dealerships are affected, car insurance is affected, smog centers are affected, inspectors. Then you don't need gas stations, tire centers, brake centers, Pep Boys, O'Reilly's, car washes. You also then wouldn't need valets, because you never valet an Uber ever. Now, if you look at commercial real estate and you fly over a major city and look down at it, half the land is zoned for what? Parking. So since you don't park an Uber, you just took a rare commodity. The only reason commercial real estate has the crazy value it does is it's restricted commodity, and you've just obliterated that commodity by making it 50% more available, plus commutes are now practically free. So they'll have to build cheap prefab housing for all the unemployed people who used to work in checkout counters to live in a 100 grand apartment, which will crash residential real estate.
Yeah, this is a real positive. I like it. I like where it's going. Yeah.
Now, that's before you get to blue-collar workers, because the robotic arms you see in Japan now that can just watch you make sushi once, and that's its programming. It learns it and it does it faster. They've replaced 80% of the workers there, and their productivity went up 250%, and defect rate down 80%, and that was in 2017 when I sent you that article. So here, fully loaded minimum wage workers, 33 grand a year. That robotic arms, 250K. Moore's Law would say that will get twice as fast and half as cheap every 18 months, which makes it 100 grand. Now, if that happens, but it can work 3 shifts of production, no smoke breaks, no health benefits, no liability, no suing the owner, no unions, okay, now it's cheaper and better and faster. And there's no laws to stop massive layoffs when that happens. So where do all the horses go?
It's interesting. And again, you see the bleakness, and then he and I had this conversation and said, well, where's the opportunity? Remember we were talking before, like Brian saying, what is the opportunity? And so my brain started going after this first conversation. I said, okay, well, let's start thinking it out. What's possible rather than the challenge? And I remember I texted you and you go, not bad for a EQ guy. But the short version is I realized that we're not going to have the same garage space in our homes. And usually that's about 1,000 square foot of your entire living area that goes unused because you park your car. Well, it's against the law right now to rebuild or build out and make apartments, condos, whatever you want to do in your garage. So I went and bought every domain, garageretrofit.com, garageintoabathroom.com, every single version of it, and I've already been seasoning it on the internet so that way eventually, throwing the football, when it does come that way, anyone that Googles a thing, I'll be the only person they can search for. And the whole idea is then I can use those leads, either sub them out, sell them, or go into that industry. But it's always looking at that. And after this last conversation, robot, I went and bought robotoutsource.com, rentarobot.com, every possible version of it. Because again, like a football player, you got to see what's coming down the field, not just what's here.
Since space will be at a premium, my friend yesterday is buying laundromats in the worst parts of town because they'll be required more, and he's putting in arcade machines and miniature ones for the kids to stay busy while they're waiting 40 minutes with a handful of quarters. I bought into some junkyards because all the cars have to go somewhere, when in 3 years after that, it becomes illegal for humans to drive on the freeway because they'll disturb the Ubers.
And people sit there and say, okay, wait a second, the adoptability rate to speed. Now you go back here. Where would our life be literally without this, right? And this is only, what, 11 years old? Yeah, 11 years old. How fast did we adopt in 11 years, right? I know you're going to pull that stat up. It's pretty crazy. And so the whole idea is to go, well, does that inconceivable then in half that period of time that we could adapt a new way to drive or a new thing? So the whole idea, again, is this is the doom and gloom, but what's the possibility? Where's your brain going right now? What could we take this information if you knew it? Imagine back in the old Industrial Revolution, if you knew that self-driving cars or just the car itself would take over the horse and buggy, would you have gotten to that industry? Right now is an opportunity to start seeing the future literally so you can do something about it.
Well, when we look at the future, we have a tendency, it's just human nature. At best, we can think linearly, but not exponentially. And we evolve exponentially. So you're hearing here, you're like, oh yeah, in the next 50 years we'll do that. No, it's about the next 8 years. You're looking at 47% unemployment, and 1 in 2 people can't feed their kids, and that creates LA riot type situations again.
Yay!
So just to illustrate the exponential aspect of it, agricultural revolution to industrial took us 8,000 years. Industrial to light bulb took us 120. Light bulb to the moon took us 90. The moon to creating the web took us 22. And the web to sequencing our own DNA took us 9. So major leaps now should happen every 5 years, 2 years, 6 months, that we think in our heads will take 20 years.
Absolutely crazy. This is a chance now to ask questions. Oh, wow. That was pretty quick. Ronald, yeah.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm from Boston. I believe you had something to do with the software that caused those bombers. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It's very sweet of you.
By the way, do you guys just hear what he said? Yeah. If you guys knew the technology and the things that this guy's done and the lives that this man has saved, you'll go up and thank this guy. Yes, go ahead.
What age were you when you started realizing that you were very, very different?
What age were you when you decided you were very different?
I thought it was retarded till about 9. I just didn't fit in at home, didn't fit in at school. Teachers complained I asked too many questions. Didn't know what the hell was wrong with me. I just knew I didn't enjoy farming in the rain. So my expectations are low. Every day indoors is a good day.
In the very back screaming, yeah. You.
Say, I've heard it said that when there's a 30 to 40% discrepancy between 2 people in their IQ, that the person with the higher IQ has to condescend in their language to accommodate the person with the lower IQ. Have you found that to be the case?
Why, yes, it does.
Well, I get asked questions similar to that all the time. And what you have to understand is IQ is kind of like horsepower in an engine. It's one aspect, but it's what you do with it that's important. So, I meet people all the time, and as long as, and including my friends, as long as they're passionate and excited about something, some kind of greater good, and they're chasing that, and they know more about that than me because they've spent more time on it, to me, that's a good, productive human being I can look up to. So really, it's not about IQ that I have an issue with, it's just apathy. If someone's on the planet, they're not interested in anything, don't care about anyone, including themselves, not going to change anything or do anything, it's not that I'm angry with them, I just have nothing to talk to them about.
Okay, right there.
I'm wondering, with the implementation of AI, what do you see as the way that we're going to actually take care of all the humans who have no job, like will it be universal income or some other system? How are we going to do that?
So the question was, what will happen to the people after AI
Or can the AI
kicks in?
help people?
For a while, yeah. Look, if we did respect intelligence more and voted into our structure, our legal system, our political system, then the smart thing to do would be put robot tax on the factories so they can immediately lay everyone off with zero consequences. That some percentage of the money they would save by laying everyone off would go to paying for those people's housing and food. If we weren't acting greedily and being selfish, we'd realize that robots, by doing all the hard labor, make life simpler and cheaper and safer and quicker, so everything should have an effect of being 4 times cheaper. And if that happened, there would be enough abundance for the government to give everyone a universal wage of 25 grand, which, if things are 4 times cheaper, would be the equivalent of 100 grand. And if you want to make more than that, that's up to you then, which would be a wonderful thing. And it may be where we end up. But in the history of humankind, we've never done the right thing as a majority of people, or we wouldn't still have the global warming argument going on. So we will have, to me, 10 to 15 years of civil war and bloody warfare before eventually someone goes, oh yeah, that was a good idea that guy said 15 years ago. Maybe we should start doing that now.
Right there, Jose.
So I've been programming since I've been 14, so I have a lot of experience with AI. One of the things that I've seen in human behavior, because this is something that I help a lot of different business owners, from people that are just starting out to people that are high performers. The biggest thing that I've seen is that once they end up getting rid of the stress of finance, they're able to be much more creative. They adopt things at a much quicker rate. Why do you think that there's going to be a mass unemployment when I've been able to, when you probably have seen, or when you think people can be able to adapt in such a longer time? Why don't you think that adaptation is going to happen almost immediately and overnight? Because in my experience, what I've been able to see is that once you get rid of the stress of finance.
This is a question, not a.
No.
Okay.
The stress of finance, once I've been able to actually see people get rid of that, I've been able to see them exponentially be able to grow from that point and fundamentally change who they are and adopt things and become the creators, which I think would end up getting rid of that percentage of unemployment that you foresee.
What age are you working with or teaching?
All ages.
Okay. So we used to have people who were blacksmiths and shoe horses, and then they became gas lamp lighters. And then we invented electricity, and they went from gas lamp lighting to learning to be taxi drivers. We invented Uber, and they left taxi drivers and had to do something else. The trouble with this is you can't take a taxi driver and teach him to be an AI programmer overnight. Maybe you, if you've been coding since you were 14, but not most people. And even in the Industrial Revolution, someone had to make the machines, is the argument. It's like, okay, well, someone's got to make these machines and maintain them and everything else, until the machines can make the machines. We've never had a shift before where the evolution can think for itself, learn quicker, never sleep, fix itself, repair itself, and have its own babies. So basic AI, you're right. Simple AI like GPSs and stuff like that is not going to replace anyone. But if you've played with deep learning algorithms and genetic algorithms and systems having their own babies that kill off their parents and figure that out evolutionary, within 5 minutes, they have 100 generations of themselves. There's no control over what that final 100 generation later baby thinks.
I'm already afraid. So I've heard you a few times, Walter. Thank you for being here. And one of the things that you were talking about before is how real is it to download the entire contents of the human brain into a hard drive? You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's a bit of a pet project of mine. So the human brain is estimated about 2.4 petabytes of data. It's 2,400 gigabytes of data that we have. Hard drives to capture that will be available in about 8 years at Best Buy, and we have 100 billion neurons. We can have that in about 12 years on a chip. We can have 100 million transistors. Our MRI scans will get down to the neural level of being able to capture neurons and do a capture of the brain in perfect detail. So if you can take that structure, change its substrate, move the data in, and capture how the electrical structure is put together, theoretically it's possible to upload the human brain and back it up like you back up your iPhone to the cloud. Now, it's not just theoretical. If you look up Professor Ted Berger at USC, he's actually downloaded the memories of mice already onto a chip and then can upload it from the chip back into the mouse and prove that that works. Now, that's just memory, not consciousness. But that's been proven, peer-reviewed, American Scientific Journal, and I think $200 million in funding from DARPA. But what that means is, well, what happens to your privacy if I can Google your memories? But also is the cure to Alzheimer's and dementia if you can back up grandma before her hard drive gets corrupted, or at least reprogram the names of her kids so she doesn't forget them. Now, if you combine that with a few other things, the Chinese, not authorized, but have cloned chimpanzees who are now alive 2 years later and perfectly healthy, unlike Dolly the sheep. That's 99% the same DNA as us. So if you take that further, and you can take your DNA, clone it, adjust your telomere level, which controls aging, but use it to speed it up rather than slow it down, I can grow you a 20-year-old twin brother or sister in 4 years. Now, if I take what you uploaded to the cloud and download it into them, assuming your consciousness is in here somewhere, then you are 20 again. Back you up every night in case you get hit by a bus, and do it again. Every time you hit 30, I'll reset you to 20, but your brain can be 100 years old. Now, we've had 40 years research on cancer, HIV, ALS, MS, and cured none of it. Why cure terminal disease if I can throw it away with the old body? And the short-term workaround for this that has been done 29 times now is head transplants. Sever the neck, put it on a new body, reattach it, which is actually relatively simple to do because it's fleshiness and a hole. The hard part is the spine is a million strands of dried spaghetti. But we found if you split the spine, put it back together, electrically stimulated in traction, it will, like every part of the body, try to grow back together. But only over 3 nanometers. But we now have a 1 nanometer laser. So I just take all the things that exist and project, okay, well, it's only a matter of time before that all comes together. Think about medical technology over the last 50 years. Everything has been around understanding the body, replacing it, cloning it, heart transplants, kidney transplants, liver transplants, lung transplants. This is just another organ. Why do we think it's so sacred we can't touch it? And when we do, that's transhumanism. It changes what it means to be human. And we used to be amoebas and then fish and then monkeys and Neanderthals. So why do we think we're stuck like this just because this happens to be when we're born?
Go ahead, tell the truth. You did it already, didn't you?
Yeah, what do you got?
We've tried some backups.
What do you see for cryptocurrency in this rosy future you envision?
What do you see as a cryptocurrency? That's just out of the left field.
Not really. He's on point. There's a guy named Bitcoin Jesus Antopoulos. Interesting guy, younger guy, computer science degree, finance, and then worked for Goldman Sachs in New York. So that's pretty good qualifications for looking at crypto. But he's Greek. And he was there with his mom when the currency crisis was happening. And she had a little inheritance from her parents' house that had passed away. And he said, Mom, you got to move your money into Bitcoin. I don't know what the government's going to do, but you got to move your money over. And she did. She trusted him. And a month later, the government decided anyone with more than 50 grand is rich and put a 30% penalty on it and froze the accounts and only let them take so much out as their economy collapsed. And in the meantime, her money went up 3-4-fold. Now, picking a particular currency is kind of like betting on horses to me right now because it's 1% of people own them and 1% of them actually understand them, haven't read the code to understand what proof of work is and how it runs. And when even if I understand it, that doesn't make it safe if no one else does because the whole thing's based on perception. So cryptocurrency will be here for the future. It's an obvious step forward. It will happen. Which one is entirely random, which is why I do arbitrage. I don't have to care which one wins. I just bet on human chaos for at least 7 years and trade the delta. That's been working reasonably well. But weirdly, crypto will be a flight to quality. The other quick way to think about it is you have money. Your government has debt. One of you is interested in deflation. So if they can get the dollar down to 50 cents relative value in the world, they just saved themselves paying the Chinese back 10 trillion. So it's not about going to crypto to make money or get rich quick. It's about getting the hell out so you can save, so your dollar is still worth $1. So it's It's
Wow.
different. It's different than you think.
That is a great perception. Yes, right there.
So what is your advice for how entrepreneurs can thrive in the coming years?
Advice for how entrepreneurs thrive?
Thrive in the next couple of years.
Question everything. All the assumptions we have, like real estate has made the most money for most people historically, and it's always a safe investment, and location matters, and all these other things. Everything is true until it isn't. And these game changers that are happening will fundamentally affect things that used to always be true. So I think you have to open your mind more than ever. You have to rent a brain, brainstorm with others. Be nimble, be quick in how fast you can react to things. I mean, look at how fast things are changing in the cannabis industry now that it's legalized. It's phenomenal. They're doing things that took 30 years in other industries to grow up that quickly. And they're becoming Coca-Cola overnight in their packaging and marketing and everything else. It's really about wrapping your head around these statistics and what's likely to happen and where it's likely to go. You never want to be too early. I think they say if you're like 10 years too early, it's going to hurt you and you'll probably go out of business. But if you're 2 to 3 years ahead, it's about the sweet spot that by the time you're ready, the market's just organically ready. So that's where we try to focus, about 2 to 3 years out on where things need to be. A lot of the big companies that are around now, they're pretty much dinosaurs that are surviving just based on their size, but I don't think they will be able to continue doing that as everyone gets micropayments and quick services and apps that are just faster and quicker, and nobody wants to deal with the, I can't transfer my money till next Tuesday because it's now after 5 on a Friday and it's a 3-day weekend and there's a bank holiday. It's like, try explaining that to a millennial who wants you to post the photo 30 seconds after they take it. They're used to instant gratification, not 9 to 5 restrictions on their own assets.
That's so powerful.
When I explain cryptocurrency to younger people, they're shocked that we don't already have it. When I explain it to older people, they're shocked that people would consider this monopoly money real.
So we are going to wrap it up. This is the last chance to ask a question live, and we're going to go eat. What is your question?
What was the last mistake you made?
What's the last mistake you made?
Good one. Just before I answer that, because I don't know how fast people are going to leave the room, I want to thank Greg for having me. Sorry I missed the last couple. I was always out of town. Every time they had this, I was somewhere else. So I really appreciate it. I'm a little slow today. I'm still jet lagged. I just came back from London. So I really appreciate you having us.
Absolutely.
So last mistake I made. So one of the lessons that was pointed out to me, I've always been somewhat divisive in how I present my points of view. And what I found is the 80-20 rule kicked in, where 80% of people were somewhat scared of change or impact or the things I was bringing up. And the 20% gravitated towards me, and they were usually the movers and shakers and doers and the people with the budgets. And I was like, cool, it's a natural filter. And then someone pointed out to me that it's not optimal, which is a great way to get my attention. And they said, what's better than people loving you and hating you is people who love you and people who are okay with you. So he said, people know your reputation, so it's okay for you to judge. Your judgment is pretty accurate of people, but don't wear it on your sleeve. Don't show it to them. Don't use your body language to totally shift away from the people you're ignoring. Throw them a bone, talk to them, involve them, get their ideas. So now I have a bunch of idiots who think they're my friends. But it makes me more likable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end with that one. Walter O'Brien, everybody.